Right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to all of you, and to big welcome to everybody who's joined us here this morning. It's super nice to be here and to be able to do this course, which we've been aiming to do for a long time. And even though we're very busy, we just thought, let's go ahead and do it because I think it's going to be fun. So I hope that you're all ready for a few hours of engaged work. And I also want to just thank Previn, who's helping me this morning with managing the online platform. So Previn, you'll just keep an eye on as people come in to just mute so that we just keep things going nice and smoothly here. And if you haven't yet introduced yourself in the chat, then please do. We will get a chance to, just hear from each other as we go along. We'll also be working in sort of small breakout groups. We had quite a big sign up for this morning's meeting. So I'm anticipating still a few more people joining us as we go along. But yeah, let's get going. So the main tool that I'm going to use for today's course is a Miro board. And I'll put the link in the chat now. So let me just do that. So I'm actually going to teach the whole course using this Miro board, which is quite a cool online learning tool because you can put all sorts of things on it. And you can also, then you've got a really very good record of what's been going on, which means all of you can visit the Miro board afterwards. Hopefully we can also work a little bit together on the Miro board while we're here today. If we can't do that, it's okay. We'll do as much as we can. But I'm going to use it mainly as the platform for what we're doing today. So the link is there and everybody should be able to, just click in and get onto the Miro board. So if you're able to do that, then try to do that so that you can just have the Miro board with you. But I'll also be showing it on the share screen. So if you don't have the Miro board with you, you'll be able to see it here and you'll be able to see us working together on the Miro board as we progress through the morning. So in my very informal little email that I sent out yesterday, I sort of gave you a sense of what we're going to try and cover today. I'll go through the whole structure of the program first, and then I'm going to share with you how we'll move through today. So what you see on the board here in front of you is our course for today. So this is the overview of our course. This is the session 1. What we'll be covering today is session 1. And then next time we'll have session 2 and we'll continue to build it on the Miro board. I'll add session 2 at the bottom there, session 3, session 4. So if you want to look back on anything or if you want to, remind yourself of anything, you can always come back to this Miro board and you can access pretty much everything that we are going to work with. So you won't have to remember many things. What you could do is you could bookmark the Miro board. So if you click in the top there, you'll see that's the URL and you can bookmark it on your computer. If you add the bookmark, then that just means that you'll be very quickly be able to find this Miro board at any time on your computer. So I would encourage you to do that, okay, as a kind of starting activity for the course is to bookmark our Miro board. The second thing that I wanted to suggest is that when you work on the Miro board, there's a little arrow here at the top. You can see my one is black. And if you switch it, then it goes blue, and then you can just see everybody is on the Miro board. Can you see them? We've got visiting researchers, visiting painters, visiting makers, visiting trailblazers, visiting visionaries, visiting developers, visionary thinkers, and then we have Previn, who's changed his name on the Miro board already, and Rhona. So, so what you can see there is everybody else is on the Miro board. But one of the things that becomes very difficult when everybody's on the Miro board is you can't actually see what's happening on the Miro board. So I would encourage you to click this little blue arrow at the top, and that says hide collaborators cursors. So if I click it, you'll see, whoops, everybody disappears. Okay, so you haven't disappeared off the Miro board. It's just that we can't see everybody and their cursors moving around. Okay, is that clear to everybody? So the best way to use a Miro board if you want to see the actual content is to hide the collaborators' cursors. So you click that little loop button at the top and it goes, it changes color and then to black, and then you know that everybody's still there. You can see them there at the top, but it's not interfering with the way that you are coming to see what's going on the Miro board. Okay, so I'll come back to that again just as new people join, so that all the new people can yeah, I'll put the link in the chat again. So Previn, if you can just watch and just regularly put the Miro board link into the chat as new people join, because of course when you join you can't see the previous information in the chat. Okay. So again, a big good morning to everybody who's joined us since the last time I said good morning. And I'm really happy to be here, happy to have you on this course. I mentioned that I'm going to keep it quite informal and hopefully enjoyable, but I'm going to now show. So the other thing about the Miro board is that when you get a Miro board in front of you, it can be a bit confusing to find your way on it. And one of the ways of dealing with that is to come to the bottom corner here. You can see the bottom corner, and there's a little arrow, that's double-sided arrow, and it says fit to screen. So what that will do is it will always help you to find the whole, and then you can move into the section that you want to be on the Miro board. Can you see? So you can move the Miro board and you can expand the text on the Miro board, and then you can go back to ground zero where you can see the whole thing again, and then you can zoom and move in and out of the Miro board again. Okay, so I think those are the most basic things when it comes to working with a Miro board. So I think we'll just keep repeating some of them so that everybody kind of is able to work with the Miro board as we go along. So excuse me if I repeat these a bit much for everybody, but it's one of the important things is just to be able to work together on this platform. So the first thing I'm going to start with is the title of our course. When I was trying to think about how do you write and run an academic writing course that is, you know, interesting and exciting, I thought, okay, let's start with tiny texts and we'll grow our work into word gardens. So in keeping with the theme of TESF, which is also about, you know, flourishing and about producing a new kind of knowledge in the world, and also with our commitment to sustainable futures and sustainable worlds, I thought, okay, let's make word gardens from our work. And what I'm trying to signal with that is that we really want your work to be beautiful, just as gardens are beautiful. We want to see word gardens coming from your work. So I feel that it's quite important that we, you know, just enjoy the course and, you know, work our way into academic publishing. So often people make academic publishing to be such a big, horrible thing, but in fact, it can be quite fun, actually. And you can take from a tiny text and you can build a beautiful word garden out of your work. So that's the way I want to encourage us to approach the course and to work together on the course. So it's a free academic writing course. It's in the spirit of Knowledge Commons. We are trying to also produce open access scholarship, Knowledge Commons work, and we're particularly trying to also strengthen academic writing from the Global South. And one of the reasons for that is because not enough of our knowledge is actually making its way onto the international and the what you call accessible mainstream publishing platform. So we do beautiful work here, but we're not communicating it well enough out there. So hence this course is to try to help us to all do that, to make our work flourish, to turn our work into word gardens, and to let's try and share them in the best possible way that we can. So the way that we've thought about this course is to just do it as 4 3-hour online course sessions. So we'll have 4 of these 3-hour sessions. I think Previn will remind me in the middle that it's time for a body break because I tend to get a bit enthusiastic and then forget the time. So Previn will also help me to just hold time. I think, Colleen, you can also help us with that a bit, and anybody else just remind us when we need a body break, sort of halfway through. So the first one is today. The second one will be on the 20th of June. The next one, the third one, will be on the 4th of July. And the last one will be on the 1st of August. So we have asked everybody to please be able to sign up for all four, because if you miss one, you're going to miss quite a big part of the process of developing your academic paper. So in this time between the 9th of June and the 1st of August, we're going to work with you to develop an academic paper that you can submit to a journal for review and hopefully also for publication. So we're going to give you lots of support, lots of tips and tricks, and also just space to talk to each other and to think about your work and to keep working on your work. You know, it takes work to write an academic journal paper, but we were going to work with you on it. I'm also going to do one. I love these courses because every time I do a course, I also write a paper. It helps me to write papers, and that's why I also love doing them. So our sessions will be always between 9 and 12 p.m. and it's South African Standard Time. I think we have the other times correct there, and we'll just, you know, try to keep that fairly stable, the timing. So please do, if you haven't yet, just, you know, put it into your calendars so that you can join us for all four papers. We will use the same Zoom link each time. So the Zoom link sent out for today is the one that we'll use each time. So today's session, the first session, is starting your paper writing journey. What we're going to do today is we're going to try and choose our journals, and we're going to try to write our abstracts. And we're going to start with a tiny text, and we're going to help you to choose the type of paper that you want to write, and to just give a sense of, you know, what is your big idea and what do you want to do and why do you want to do it and who's going to be interested in it. And that will help you also to decide how to approach your work. So that's the focus of today. Next time, we're going to look at the flow. How do we then develop the abstract into a flow? In other words, a kind of a line of argument, and we'll produce headings and we'll produce holding text so that by the end of next session, you'll have the first bones of your first draft of your paper. Then you'll need a bit of time between then to, you know, work a little bit more on it. And then we'll go in, on the 4th of July, we'll be puffing up the paper. In other words, we'll be building the paper outwards, puffing it up, getting more into it, tightening it up, getting the detail together, get some feedback on what you're doing, beef up your arguments, bring evidence in, bring other insights from literature in, and then we'll invite peer review and feedback on your work. And we'll make peer review teams. In other words, we'll use each other to peer review our work. And then by the 1st of August, you should be ready with a, you know, much better draft of your work. And then we'll talk about how do you then polish it up and get it ready for submission. So the important thing is that you don't have to worry about polish at this point. Polish we do at the end, okay? Between now and the end, we just work. We work from tiny text. We write freely. We develop our arguments. We talk about what we want to do. We puff it up. We elaborate. And then we start to clean up, polish, and get it ready for submission. Okay, so you don't have to worry too much even about your grammar at this point. You don't have to worry about your handwriting style. You don't have to worry about anything. The most important thing to worry about is your ideas, and to make sure that the ideas that you want to share are the ones that you can bring into focus and that you can work on nicely as we go on together. Okay, so the outcome of our course is going to be an academic paper ready for submission for peer review to one of our TESF special issue journals. We'll talk about those a bit later. Or you can also submit it to another journal. It doesn't have to be one of the TESF special issue journals. And what we want to do is just to, you know, create a community in which we can do this work together, because it can be quite lonely and it can be quite intimidating, and it can also be quite isolating. And we want to try to reduce those difficulties as we build the Global South Archive on transforming education for sustainable futures, which is the overarching theme of our work. So that's an overview of what we're going to do together. I'm not sure if there are any questions at this point, but if you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat, and then Previn will also alert me to that as we go along. Otherwise, if we're ready to go, we can continue with the rest of the process. Okay, shall we start moving? Yeah, you happy?
The questions?
No, I hope everybody's had a chance to introduce themselves in the chat.
Hi, Heila.
Yes.
Hi. I have a question.
Hi. Yes.
Why is it important to identify which journal we are going to be publishing in before we begin to write? Is it possible to just write what we want to share? I mean, whatever needs to be written, and then identify the journal at a later point in time?
Yeah, so Arundhati, good question. It's usually quite helpful to identify the journals early on, because every journal has its own, what you call it, sort of style and requirements and so on and so on. And they have word length limits and so on. So it helps if you have a sense of, you know, where you're aiming to go, because it helps you also then to think about, you know, not, so if you want to, you know, submit a paper to a special issue journal, for example, and it takes papers of 6,000 words, then you don't want to be writing, you know, 20,000 words and then discover you have to write 6,000 words, because it helps you to just, you know, in a way, plan your work a little bit more carefully. So what we try to do is we try to look for 2 or 3 different journals that we might want to target, and then look carefully at those journals, because we also get a sense of style that other people are writing in. We also get a sense of whether there's a good fit, in other words, where our work is likely to find resonance. And then it helps you also to see how others are writing, and then you can come back, you know, so it's like an iterative relationship in terms of where you're aiming to share your work. So it's helpful, it's actually very helpful to decide in upfront that you're aiming for this one first. If not that one, then the next one. If not that one, the next one. Because it actually helps to both plan and also then to save time. Guys, can I ask you not to move things around on the mirror board if you don't mind? Yeah, at this point, because then it just gets things a bit muddled up for me. Okay. Does that answer your question, Arundhati?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and we'll come back to that again in the last part of our session today. Okay, so I'm going to start off just with this first section here, which is the section on your big idea. Okay, session 1, your big idea. So the question that I have here for you now is, what do you want to write about? Okay, what do you want to write about? So that's the first thing for you to answer for yourself. And I would like to encourage you, if you've got a way of maybe, you know, having a little file open on your side for your academic paper. And as these questions come up, to answer them for yourself. If you want to, you can also answer them in the chat. Yeah. Okay, Bridget, I see your question. I'm going to get into that in the last part of today's session. Okay, I'm going to show you how to find good journals, where you can target, how to decide, all of that. Okay, so I'll get to that question in the third part of today. And then there's a quick hint from Priya in the chat. If you move something on the mirror board by mistake, you can press Ctrl-Z on your keyboard and it will move it back for you. Okay, so please, if you do move things around on the mirror board by mistake, use the Ctrl-Z. Thank you very much for that, Priya. It's a new lesson for me too. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is ask the question, what do you want to write about? So I've put this little picture here. You know, you could be, for example, have been doing work with water justice, and you can see here all these people standing in the line, and you might want to actually write about water availability, water security, water justice, and public education. Okay, so simple, that might be what you want to write about. So I want you to just take a couple of minutes and think about this first important question and to try to answer it in one sentence. Okay, I'm going to get you guys to write as we go along. So please don't just sit there, actually write as I suggest you to write, because we learn to write by writing. We don't learn to write by listening. So please do write. What do you want to write about? If you're good at the mirror board, you can actually put your answer into one of these little blue boxes. If you feel like writing on the mirror board, head for a little blue box and you can put your idea in there. If you're not so confident with the mirror board, you can put it in the chat. Sukesh has got a question.
Hi, Heila, can you see me?
Morning, yes. I can't really see everybody, but
Okay, but you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to check. There was, you're talking about an academic paper. There was also this idea of the intervention. There was an email that went around, and the intervention is, I guess it's a smaller kind of thing. It's not really a paper as such. So do you think, like, I'm sure like what we're doing here also applies to that, but if you would also just keep that in mind, that some of us are writing interventions and not academic papers.
Right, okay. And by intervention, you mean, Sukesh, a short report or?
Yeah, I think it's 3,500 words.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, it's a description of the research or what you've done or whatever it is that one wants to share, but it's not a full like academic paper.
Sure. And do you want to put it into a journal, Sukesh, or?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I think, even intervention, I'll get to the point about the special issues a bit later, because the one special issue, we do want to take a range of different, what you call genres or different types of paper. So that's perfect, so we will make flexibility. We even take poetry. So,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. We will try to get them into the journal, the open access academic journal. So, I'm talking about academic paper in a broad sense here. We can take different types of academic paper, but of course, all of them need to, in a way, still carry the rigor and the, be able to into that type of space. So we'll talk about it a bit more when I talk about the type of paper that you feel you want to write.
Yeah, and perhaps maybe if you could also talk about like, what sort of flexibility that allows in terms of form. Like I come from an artist perspective. Is there a way to like turn that around and not just write, just like text, or
Yeah. Absolutely. And actually in the next session, Sukesh, I was planning to do more of that, to look more at the, genre and how you structure with different tools and so on. You can bring images and writing, you can write photo essays, you can even do multimedia back, linked into the back of your paper, your story or whatever. So I think just, feel free at the moment not to get stressed about form. I think at this point, let's focus on, what you want to write, or why you want to write it, and who might be interested, because that will also help you to decide on form.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Okay, so is everybody just taking their time to write what it is that you want to write about? If you would like to put it in the chat, or try to get it onto a little blue sticker on the mirror board. You need to click on the little blue sticker and then start writing to get it onto the mirror board on the little blue stickers. So we've got somebody here writing, wanting to write about land reform and its implications for youth. We've got somebody else wanting to write about choral music and how it embeds learning in many disciplines. We've got somebody else wanting to write about languages in the broadest sense and how they are overlooked and underestimated in education research. We've got somebody else wanting to write about some of the learnings from a master study, which is on the whole system perspective and honoring the social commons in regenerative sustainability projects. We've got somebody wanting to produce recommendations. I can see there. Oops, now I've got too many things going on here. For creating community-driven interventions in education from children who've been marginalized, children from marginalized indigenous communities, that captures key learnings from the last 25 years of VBVT's work. Oh, interesting things people are wanting to write about. How to create conservation ethic amongst young learners, and transforming education for sustainable futures, realities, challenges, and perspectives. Are there more in the chat coming through? Previn, can you let me know if there's others coming through in the chat?
Nothing in the chat yet, Prof.
Okay. So I'm hoping that everybody so far has been able to do that one sentence. What do you want to write about?
I got Connie's one and I'll put it on the mirror board.
Okay, if you see any in the chat, you can just pop them on the mirror board, then we can get them all together on the mirror board. So either put it in the chat or on the mirror board. Want to put it on the mirror board, head for a little blue block and type in it. Putting more little blue blocks in there for you. Remember that if you don't want to see everybody's cursors, you can switch it off here at the top. You see, if it's on, you can see everybody's cursors and you can see how busy everybody is. There's a visiting sculptor wanting to write about the potential of transformative pedagogy in learning spaces. There's a visiting trailblazer here. And if you don't want to see everybody else's cursors, hit this little arrow at the top. Okay, and then it changes from blue until black into a black color, and then all of the cursors disappear. So you've got more visual space on the mirror board. Yeah, somebody else who wants to explore the use of the relationship between SDGs and entrance point for developing curriculum understanding. Trevin, I'm wondering if you can't move that for me into a blue block. Or Priya, maybe, if you know how to do that. Yeah. Okay, is everybody feeling like they've got their main idea down somewhere? Okay, so if you've got your main idea down, then the next question I want to ask you to engage yourself with is, why is it important? Why is this important? And how does it contribute to transforming education for sustainable futures? So perhaps you can just, add that to your own notes. You don't need to add that onto the mirror board at this point. Just add it to your own notes. Why is it important? How does it contribute to transforming education for sustainable futures? This is a very, very important question, because if you can't answer it for yourself, then your readers are not likely to see what you're trying to communicate. So it's really important for you to answer that question. Okay. So if we have somebody who here wants to understand treatment claims on health and their implications for out-of-school youths, well, why is that important? Okay. There's somebody who wants to explore the use of the relationship between SDGs as an entrance point for developing curriculum understanding. Well, why is that important? Choral music embeds learning in many disciplines. Well, why is that important? Land reform and its implications for youth. Why is that important? And how does it contribute to transforming education for sustainable futures? Guys, if you're moving things on the mirror board by accident, just move them back with a Control Z, as Priya said. Okay. If you're wanting to support transformative learning through virtual learning networks, why is it important and how does it contribute to transforming education for sustainable futures? So just work on this issue now. Why is it important? So I'm just going slowly, giving you time to make the notes for yourself, because remember, you're going to be working on your paper as we work on this whole program. Give you a minute or two for that. Okay, so I see in the chat there's a couple of people who've come in a little bit late and are trying to see what we're doing here on this mirror board. So I'm going to go right back to the beginning. In the corner here, you go to the little minus, you get the double arrow, and you see the whole thing. Now you'll see here that most of us are working here under session 1, this first part. And I mentioned, Caleb, before you joined, that the whole course is on the mirror board. So everything that we need for this course is here on this mirror board. And I also mentioned to everybody when we started to, once you get into the mirror board, bookmark it so that you can find it easily following the course and between each session. A good hint that I've shared a couple of times: if you don't want to see everybody's cursors, look there, you can see everybody's cursors. At the same time, while you're trying to do something, click this little arrow at the top, which says hide collaborators' cursors. Okay, then you hide everybody else, and then you can be more focused as to where you want to contribute. At the moment, we've been writing what we want to write about into the little blue blocks here at the bottom. If you want to write in a little blue box, just go to it with your arrow and click, and then start typing. Click into the little blue box and then start typing. Okay, so we did that. And if you're not able to do that, you can put your big idea in the chat, and then Previn will help us to transfer it to the mirror board. I want us to try to keep a good record on the mirror board, because we'll come back to it also next time and next time. But in the meantime, while everybody's been doing that, what do you want to write about? If you've not yet done that, please do it. And then the next question I've asked everybody is, why is it important? So you want to write about the potential of transformative pedagogy in learning spaces. Well, why is it important? And how does it contribute to transforming education for sustainable futures? And I've asked everybody to make a note of that on their own little writing record. And you need to be having a document open or a notebook next to you where you are actually writing as we go along. So far you should have what you want to write about, and then also have written something about why it is important and how it contributes to transforming education for sustainable futures. And then the next thing to answer is, who is going to be interested in your work? And I want you to name 3 people specifically. Okay, so think about 3 people that you know who would be interested in this work, because those are the people that you're writing for. You write for people that are likely to be interested in your work, but it's very helpful to name them specifically. So you could think of, a great policymaker that you really admire, and you think, well, this person might be interested in my work, so I'm going to name them. Or you may think, well, I think the teachers that I worked with are going to be interested in my work, but name one of those teachers. Or you may think that, the master students, the other master students that you know might be interested in your work, and then name one of them. So actually think of real people and name those 3 people. Is everybody okay with that? Right, now I'm going to ask for a few people to just share with us where they are with this. So if you can open up open up your mic, put your hand up if you'd like to share with us your thinking so far. What do you want to write about? Why is it important? And who would be interested in your work? Anybody willing to share? Put your hand up, and Previn will help me manage everybody who wants to speak. Anybody, please feel free. Connie?
Good morning, everyone. Morning, Prof.
Morning, Connie.
What I want to write about, I want to have an understanding of the interventions that are organized for students who are potential entrepreneurs, what impact it has on them in understanding the concept of entrepreneurship as they are studying, or as it is integrated in one of their modules. So this is important for me because I understand that entrepreneurship is one of the remedies of reducing poverty and hunger. So if it is integrated into the curriculum, especially the university curriculum or education curriculum, it would also reflect quality education and also be responsive and transformative education. So the people that I think would likely be interested in this work, lecturers, which are my colleagues, students themselves who are emerging entrepreneurs, as well as university management.
Okay, and do you have like specific people in mind there, Connie? Which
Yes,
lecturer, which student, and which
okay.
I want you to be that specific. You know why? Because it really helps you when you have very specific people in mind. It actually helps you to write, because then you don't just write for yourself, you actually write for them. And the more specific the people are, the more likely you are to, target your writing extremely well to reach all of them. But it really helps to have actual real people in mind, not just a category of people like lecturers, students, managers. which lecturer, which student, which manager, write them down, because in a way, when you write, it helps so much to just keep thinking about them, because then you're writing for others and not just for yourself. But the real people, the actual real people, helps you to really conceptualize who those readers are likely to be. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Should I go on and mention them?
No, it's fine, as long as you've got them in your notebook.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, good. Anybody else like to share with us what they want to write about, why it's important, and who's likely to be interested in the work? Please join us, just so we hear a little bit from you. Otherwise, it's so quiet here on my side.
Please
Lunga,
go ahead.
from you.
You can unmute Lunga and speak.
Good morning, everyone. We've been thinking about maybe sort of like a topic of enabling social approaches to contextualized learning at primary schools. This is a case of collective learning in rural South Africa. Why we think this is important is because we've learned some what we think could be alternative ways of learning that are inclusive, collaborative, and collective. These actually help learners of different cognitive abilities to be able to share their knowledge in a live learning situation. But not only that, it also helps the learners to be able to commit more to their learning, more like the affective learning domain is sort of more strengthened in this way. And because the kids can be able to see what they are learning, how it is related to their daily lives and their social context. But it is also a way that opens up the knowledge to the broader community, because if it is something that kids are able to replicate, they're more likely to share it broadly, and that actually opens up the knowledge to broader than just the school and students. Thinking about people, Steve Worth has been a part of our project, and I would like to hear from him as an educationist, just what we are thinking, and broadly in terms of how is this going to be taken in by the education sector. But the teachers, mainly Lindiwe Mazibuko is in person, and an academic student, Tabitha, who has been dealing with environmental studies at school. She just graduated last year or so with environmental education masters. So she has a fresh look into this and been thinking about schools. And so there's a lot of other people but those are the specific three.
Good. And is that helpful to you, Lunga, to have those three people in mind, do you think?
No, I think it is, because I mean, if Steve Worth is a professor, like a retired professor, so I think that he would be bringing a very critical aspect to this, and you know that if he thinks that this is something worth pursuing more, or that it's a good contribution, that. But also a practitioner like Ms. Mazibuko, who's at the school, will also give you the context of whether this is possible in a school setting, or what's the problematic things would be about it, as well as somebody who's thinking, hey, you know what, this might be something worth looking into, to be somebody maybe that might want to study it further at higher learning, maybe PhD or any other level of learning. So I think that those three that combination really makes a lot of sense to me.
Awesome. And what I really liked about your choice, Lunga, is it's, very different people, actually, who bring very different, what you call it, engagements with your work. So that's really interesting. And I think Connie's was similar, she had the managers, the lecturers, the students, but the specific, and you've got also, this diversity of people that you really want this work to speak to. And of course, that's part of the features of TESF, or Transforming Education for Sustainable Futures. We can't only speak to one audience. We need to also have the, engaged approach to our scholarship, which is what's come through from all of the projects across this amazing network. So we also want to make that work accessible to, a range of different people. And that, I think, links also to Sukesh's question earlier about, the forms that we write in. So we can write, in an traditionally academic form. We can also write shorter cases. We can write sort of well-informed stories. There's a range of different ways of doing this kind of writing. So we'll talk about that, I think, probably in our next course session. But it's also interesting as you think about who you're writing for, it also helps you to think about how will it work best if I'm writing for those people. So keep that in mind also as you, continue with the work that we're doing here together. Can one more person maybe join, share with us? Colleen, I see you talked about these activities being very challenging. Do you want to share your thinking?
Sorry, Prof, it took me a while to unmute. I found it very difficult to, when you said, why is it important? So it's quite abstract in my brain, and I came to this writing course with an abstract idea in my mind, but then to actually having to put it down in words was quite tricky. And then when you moved on to saying, who is going to be interested in my work? It took me a while to actually identify people, because I was worried that the work isn't valuable enough to actually create an interest in these people. But then when you changed the wording slightly and you said, who do I want this work to speak to? I found that I was able to actually justify to myself those individuals that I would like this work to speak to. So yes, Prof, that's where I'm at the moment.
Thanks, Colleen. Thanks for adding that. It's a nice way, slightly, expanded way or different way of thinking about the same thing. It's kind of who is going to, be interested in the work, or who do you want it to speak to, or who does it going to have meaning for, is another way of asking that same question. Let's take one more person, but you want to tell us a bit about your work, Colleen, what you're wanting to do and why it's important and who those people are.
So Prof, I've said that there were a couple of findings that came out of a recent master's study, which I found very, very valuable. But it was quite challenging to find which of the findings I would like to write about, because I can't be writing about the master's study. I need to be, my audience isn't interested about the actual study. The audience will be interested possibly about some of the findings. So one of the findings was the whole system's perspective and how...
Can you tell us what the study is about, Colleen, so that we can follow what you're talking about?
Sure. So I used the value creation framework to look within higher education at Rhodes University specifically. It looked at 6 case studies within the university that had a regenerative sustainability focus to them. And then I took a look to see what value there was in those 6 case studies. And one of the outcomes, or one of the findings that we presented, was a whole system perspective, and how, so now specifically to this course, you asked me, why is it important? So my response was that actions have consequences, and some unintended consequences arise when looking through a singularly focused lens. So how a whole system perspective can help bring into view the landscape and the interconnectedness of a singular focus, and the possible impact that influencing change to that singular focus might result, whether it's positive, negative, or neutral. And then who I would want this work to speak to, the 4 people that I named were Prof. Eureka Rosenberg, who is my supervisor, my son, Matthew Royal, who is a BCom graduate, Prof. Dave Suri, who is in the business side, the commerce side of the university, and Mr. Kamlesh Riga, who is the CFO of the university.
Excellent, Colleen. So I would encourage you to write that paper, because I think all of those people, you know, would probably be very interested in it and would also benefit from reading it. So yes, and interesting that you're targeting the commerce faculty people, huh? And there's good reason for that, actually, because one of the findings actually overall in the sustainability education sphere in universities is that the commerce faculties are most often less engaged in these issues than the other faculties. So there's good reason, I think, for that. And certainly the systems approach, you know, is also very much aligned with international discussions about whole institution engagements with these kinds of questions. So I think you have a viable paper emerging there. All right.
Had a hand up, Prof.
Whose hand is up, Previn? Sorry.
She had a hand up before Bridget Johnson. Bridget, do you have a question, or would you like to speak? Okay, maybe it was a...
Whose hand was up, Previn?
Oh, it was Bridget, but I think maybe that was a mistake.
Oh.
And yeah, and Bushle has a question.
Okay.
John also, Samanya, his hand is up. So John, you can go ahead and speak. Please unmute.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Prof, for the insights you're giving us. I have identified my area. My area is, I want to write about tree planting in semi-arid areas, semi-arid urban areas. And the reason why is it important? Because I want the paper that I'll write to inform the communities and the policymakers and academicians on the best practices areas with limited amounts of water and high temperatures. And when it comes to the people that I want to target, when I was thinking about this, I got an insight of not just picking a person, but identifying why I'm targeting this person. Why should I target this person? One of the people I've identified is maybe the dean, the Faculty of Agriculture will be interested in this paper, as it maybe could inform him in the designing of new curriculum. Maybe the Minister of Environment could also be interested in, as it could help in policy making, and maybe a director of a non-government organization that is that targets on environmental issues will be interested in this paper. So as I was writing the persons who would be interested, I had to reason out why they would be interested. So I had another question of why they would be interested in this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, John, for adding that as well.
And Bridget is now unmuted. Sorry, Prof.
No, I'm just adding in John's addition here. Why are they likely to be interested? You see, these questions are really useful, actually, for thinking about, you know, audience. Preben, who else has got a hand up?
Bridget is unmuted. Bridget, you can go ahead and speak.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm a bit challenged with all the tech, but basically I just wanted to put forward my idea, but now I can't get rid of this screen in front of what I'm trying to look at. Okay, so I'm the one that put in the question about choral music, and why it's important. I've said that much is being said about decolonizing education. African cultural strengths historically lie in music, drama, and visual art. If we are to transform education for sustainable futures in South Africa, surely we should be capitalizing on these strengths in pedagogy that is better aligned to cultural norms than strictly imposing the Western methods of teaching and learning in primary schools. Can singing significantly improve vocabulary, for example, in a second language, English being the primary language of later schooling? Many African traditional cultures also promote a much healthier relationship with the planet in their dependency for food security embedded in the environment, climate, soil, water, and community, all providing the present challenges for which we must educate. And then my named person in Jairu at Rhodes, Kelo Monambi, who is a fundraiser at Wembley College, and that college is using music to attract local children to the private schooling that they're offering on the Cambridge methodology. I've got Prof. Steve Worth and Prof. Eureka Rosenberg, who've both been very influential for me, and Prof. Mark New. All of those, I don't know. I have to ask them if they're interested.
Yes, so 3 people primarily, Bridget, I think is quite cool in the sense that you don't get overwhelmed by trying to speak to too many people. So that's why we say, because it really forces you to focus, you know, into audience. So I would encourage you not to try to speak to 3 different profs, but to choose one.
One of them. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
You know, so and it's just to help you, you know, it's to help you focus.
Yeah.
Of course, they will probably all be interested in the paper, but for the purposes of writing, it's just helpful to not have too many, but to have more than one, and not just 2, but 3, because it makes you actually think into diversity of audience a bit, you see. So you have to work hard to choose your 3 most important people that are likely to, you want to speak to, and who are likely to be interested in the paper, and that you've thought about why they might be interested in the paper, etc. You see, so what we're doing here, it's an exercise, right? It's an exercise of shifting from what you want to write about and why it's important to who might actually be interested in it and who would actually be able to read it. So it forces you to move from the author as the kind of primary focus in writing, because writing is very hard work actually, and we tend to get very wrapped up in ourselves and our own struggles of writing, but we forget to think about our audience. So it's really cool to think about your audience right at the beginning, and then to have them in mind, have them as real people. In one case, I even had somebody who actually put little photographs of those people in front of them as they did their writing next to the computer, because then they kept on thinking about looking at those people and thinking about them as audience. And you'll see as you
That's
go,
very helpful.
as you go along with this work, it's so helpful. It helps you to, because what it does is it puts you into a conversational movement with other people, not just, you know, getting stuck in your own writing challenges. So very important to do that work, all of you, and thank you for those that have shared with us. You can see it's not very difficult to do, but it does require a little bit of thought, and this is a very important starting block for whatever you want to write, actually. If it's a poem, or if it's a picture narrative, or, you know, the type of writing is often also very much closely related to who you're also wanting to speak to with your work. Okay, so I'm going to move on now, and we're going to do another writing exercise. I'm not sure how to get rid of this blue text here. Priya and I are trying to find a problem-solving approach to that. But in the meantime, I'm going to move on now to not the big idea, we've done that, but to this next section of our course, which is to write your tiny text. Now, a tiny text is a tiny story, okay? It's a tiny story of your work. So here on the mirror board. So what we're going to do now for the next hour, and we'll take a little break in between, is we're going to write your tiny text, okay? And then what we'll do is we'll break into little groups where we'll ask you to read your tiny text to someone else or to share it with someone else. If you don't want to read it, you can just tell them about your tiny text, okay? And then what we want to ask you then is, you know, did they get it? Did they get what you're trying to say with your tiny text? Did they have any questions about your tiny text? Okay. Now that is a process to be, let me share with you, a process of beginning to author your work in a kind of the kernel. It's the kernel of your work. Okay. Following on from what we've just done. Then the next process of sharing it with someone else and to ask whether they got it and if they had any questions, it's inviting peer review. Now, whenever we write, it's very important to get peer review. People are often scared of peer review because they think, oh, my work's not good enough, and what are other people going to think about it, and blah, 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 blah. But it's extremely important to invite peer review, because what happens when you invite peer review is that you get unbelievably useful feedback, and then it helps you to just take the next step. So the one very important thing to do in this entire project of doing this writing work is to demystify peer review and to not see it as a nasty thing, but to see it as a very helpful process. And we want to help each other, so we're going to ask all of you to be helpful to each other, to listen to the tiny text of someone else and then tell them whether you got it or whether you had any questions about the tiny text. The author who writes the tiny text must take notes of what the other person says, okay? So if I write a tiny text, and I'm going to write one, and I'm going to share it with one of you, and I'm going to invite you to give me feedback, and I'm going to take notes about what you said. Okay, because that's going to help me to revise my tiny text and to move it into an abstract. Okay, so very important, this process of being free to write your tiny text. Feel free, enjoy it, have fun doing it. Then what you'll do is you'll share it with someone else. You can read it to them, or you can just tell them about it. And then you have to ask them, do you get it? And do you have any questions? And you must make notes about that. Okay, so we're going to move now to writing your tiny text, and it's version 1. In other words, it's the very beginning. We're going to have many versions of our work, because when you write, one learns to write by writing. So you write, and then you rewrite, and then you write, you get feedback, and you rewrite, and you write, and you get feedback, and you rewrite. And that's fine. It's actually fun. And it actually is, you know, very generative in the sense that it helps us all to grow our work from the tiny texts into the word gardens. So the unfortunately, this blue text now is interfering a little bit with what's on my screen here, but it's okay. We'll sort it out during the tea break. So to write a tiny text, it's a little story. So your tiny text of something important in your TESF project, which you've already identified in the previous activity, you all know what you want to write about. You all know why it's important, and you also know who's going to be interested in it. So now we want you to write a little story about that, and to use just the simple little narrative structure. Once upon a time, people did or thought that, but then we thought that. So what we did was, we did this because, and what we discovered was, and this will or may change the way we think about or do something. So if we take Colleen's example, she could write something like, once upon a time, people thought that sustainability was not important to universities. Guys, please don't move the document. But then we thought that, so she could carry on with her story, but then we thought that actually, in the light of all of the environmental and social problems in the world, sustainability is important to universities, university students, and the management of universities. So what we did was we undertook a research project to identify how universities, our university, Rhodes University, was responding to sustainability challenges in their operations. We did this because we thought that it was possible to, improve the way things were being done, whatever the case is. And what we discovered was that we need a systems approach to thinking about sustainability in our universities. And in particular, the people in the university that are influential when it comes to managing the university and its operations need to be more involved. And this will or may change the way that we think about or do sustainability in our universities. You see what I'm saying? So just tell a little story about your particular work. So for doing this now, I'm going to give you all the way to 10:30 to write your text.
Sorry, Prof. There is a question from John. Is there a criteria for writing, and how many words can we write?
Say no, John, you've got, how many minutes have we got? 15, 16, 17 minutes, 18 minutes. So I would keep it short, John. Yeah, you got 18 minutes to write your little tiny text. It's free writing, so you don't have any criteria except to follow this little guidelines here. Once upon a time, people thought that, but then we thought that. So what we did was, we did this because, and what we discovered was, and this will or may change the way we think about or do what. So use these little lines to start. 1, 2, so it's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sentences that's going to make up your tiny text. Okay, so you've now got 17 minutes, okay, all the way to 10:30 to write your tiny text. So I'm going to be completely quiet now. Everybody else is just working in their own space, writing their tiny text for the next 17 minutes. At 10:30, we'll open the floor again, we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back we'll organize ourselves into groups. So please do be back on the platform at 10:30. I'll switch the mute button off now, switch myself off so that you can have quiet to write your tiny text. If you have a big picture to go with it, you can add that, but you don't need to do that right now. First, write the tiny text. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go.